it like doesn't fail. No matter what, there is nothing that helps for me to either clear my head or make me less stressed than being on the water.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Remote No Pressure podcast. We're very excited to be here. This week, we're going to be interviewing Mariko Izumi. So I'm very excited. About that, Bill.
Yeah.
Now, she is the daughter of Wayne Izumi and the niece of Bob Izumi. And if you don't know those names, they're basically Canadian fishing royalty, as is Mariko at this point.
Mm-hmm. I'm learning all this. You taught me a lot of this. I'm still new to the fly fishing world. So,
well, she does more than just fly fishing. She does a lot of different types of fishing. But fly fishing is one of the things that she does do. So we reached out to her, and it's kind of funny because, you know, she's Canadian, so she's on the World Fishing Network.
Wait, how is it funny that she's Canadian?
It's not funny that she's Canadian, but the story I'm about to tell is because
I cut you off. That was my bad.
Come on, Bill. No, I'm just kidding. No, but she's Canadian, and what's so funny is someone was asking me, well, who's Mariko Izumi? And I was like, well, she's like the Canadian version of April Vokey, because April Vokey's been on the show. And they're like, well, isn't April Vokey Canadian? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. So isn't April Vokey the Canadian version of April Vokey?
I would think so. That would make sense.
So I felt really stupid at that point. But Mariko Izumi is on her own. She does an amazing job. But you know, she's part of this family of television anglers. You know, and it's kind of funny because I've noticed a lot of times people who are raised up in a certain industry go on to carry the legacy of their parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who are raised in a lawyer's home will become lawyers or doctors. You know, it's like third or fourth generation. You know, have you noticed that, Bill?
I have, yeah. People, well, in my industry too, I've seen a lot of people who follow in the footsteps of their fathers. Mm-hmm. You know, in ministry, I see a lot of pastors passing it down to their sons, and their sons becoming pastors. You know. Yeah,
and then their grandsons becoming pastors.
Yeah. Multi-generational.
What do you notice? I mean, do you think sometimes Mariko does an excellent job? I mean, she's really worked hard to build her name and stuff on like that. You know, so she's done an excellent job. But what I've noticed a lot of times the second, sometimes the third generation may not be necessarily gifted.
Yeah, I think it's wise for the younger generations to go out and make a name for themselves like she's doing, because if you were just passed down the company, that ruins the company in most cases. The second or third generation just doesn't have the same drive that the first and second generations did to thrive and make a name for their company, you know?
Maybe take it for granted.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, my father was a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people knew that. Both my grandfathers were pastors. And so growing up in that kind of home, which my family was crazy though, so it wasn't like whatever, but you know, it was kind of the family business is what you do. So I went to college to do that, and I just realized that I should probably not be a pastor. Not this way anyway. It was not a good fit for me, you know, but it was a family business, and it's just so easy because you know the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my kids are around all the time when I'm editing the podcast, and I just wonder if maybe they'll grow up and be in broadcasting or in music or be writers.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You kind of hope that your offspring would kind of want to follow in your footsteps, I think, to go in the same places you've been to make you proud, you know? But
yeah, and it's weird because my son's really into video games. He's 9, and I abhor video games.
Are there any good fly fishing video games?
No, there's not. There's a deer hunting one that he plays a lot.
Okay.
So I don't let him shoot people, but if he wants to shoot a deer, I'll let him do that. And he loves guns. Like we shoot 22s and stuff. So so he likes to shoot stuff.
Another good video game with shooting is Grand Theft Auto. If he's no, I'm just kidding.
I was thinking though. Remember Wolfenstein?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, you
Duke Nukem.
Yeah,
and,
go
Doom.
kill the Nazis.
Yep.
You know, and so I was thinking like, wow, you know, those are pretty violent video games, but it was like Dot Matrix or something. Like it wasn't.
It used to make me sick too. Did you ever sit? I would play it for hours. I'd just get out of school and jump on the computer back in the day. I don't know if it was DOS or Windows. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. And like you're just staring at the screen, and it's all moving it's like a 3D game, you know, point of view, and it would just make me sick. So if I watched it for more than an hour, I would have to like take a break, or I would throw up. I never threw up.
Wow.
But I'd always get sick. Like I gotta stop. I'm gonna get really sick.
We played them, you know, and my parents not one time monitored what I did.
Oh no.
Because you know it's okay.
He's just killing Nazis.
Yeah, he's just killing Nazis. No, but we weren't on the internet. It was just a disc, you know, that you put in.
Yep.
And yeah, now it's like I don't want my kids playing any video games because it's so crazy out there.
Well, people can interact with kids online too.
Yeah, and that's the scary part.
Mm-hmm. You can have them if they're playing like even one of these war games. All of a sudden, like some who knows can get in there and start talking to them and chat with them over their headset.
Right.
Yeah, it's a different world, dude.
It is. So I have to monitor everything.
Thinking back, we have a lot of these conversations. It's a different world.
We're like these two old guys.
We are.
Like yeah.
On the Muppets, those two guys up in the balcony.
Yeah, kids these days. I tell my wife we went on a date yesterday for lunch. Okay, and there's this nice restaurant we like to go to. And we got a gift card for the holiday, and so we went to lunch because both of our kids are in school and she was off work. So I was like, let's go, paint the town beige, So, so for all those of you who know, that's a Robert Earl Keen song. But anyways, so I was like, let's go paint the town beige. Let's go do our thing, So we go out there and like all of these old gray haired people, because it's a really nice restaurant and they're dressed nice,
Early bird special.
Yeah, and here I come in, and it's just kind of funny because I told her when we were leaving, I was like, it's funny because like I really enjoy doing what old people do. I like going to the quiet lunch, and I like going to bed early and reading old books.
Mm-hmm. Like we said when I first got here, Matlock or Andy Griffith Show. And
yeah, when you first got here, you come home. My grandfather, when he retired, watched Matlock every single day.
I remember watching it while it was on the air in the 80s. And I couldn't stand it back then. But now I have an appreciation for Andy Griffith,
Yeah. But my grandmother's name was Eula May, which I think is a really cool name.
Uh-huh.
And they were from old school, And so I remember every once in a while I'd go hang out with them on a summer day. Not very often, because they lived kind of far away. But I remember him, Matlock would come on at like noon. And he'd be like, I reckon it's about time for lunch, Eula May. And she'd be like, all right, Daddy. So she'd go in there and make him lunch, It was just a different time.
Yep. Different generations.
If I told my wife,
think it's about time for lunch,
she'd be like, well, what are you making? No, but it was a different time. And
yeah.
But yeah, I've noticed that with generations, just passing down to what you're familiar with. It's what you know. And Mariko's done an excellent job in building a name for herself in Canadian. Building a name for herself in Canada with the World Fishing Network.
We're such Americans.
I know. But she was awesome, and she's also helping with the fly fishing film tour as well in Canada. Awesome. So, so she's doing some really cool stuff, and I'm really thankful that she decided to join us. And so, welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Well, today on the Remote No Pressure podcast, I'm very excited to have Mariko Izumi with us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
I'm so excited. So before we get started, I just wanted to say, obviously, thank you for coming on the podcast. And we're always excited to have strong females in the industry. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what you've been up to in the fly fishing world, because I know that you are doing a lot with the fly fishing film tour there in Canada. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I'm in no way, probably like some of your other interviews, I'm in no way a super hardcore, knowledgeable fly fisher person. However, I really do love it. And I do a lot to represent it, because my partner, Kevin Estrada, and we take the fly fishing film tour across Canada. So it started in the U.S. in Denver. I think it's like 11 or 12 years now. I think it's on its 11th year. And Kevin, he used to be a pro hockey player, and so he just wanted to do a side hustle, and so he got the Canadian rights about 7 years ago, and then I jumped on board 4 or 5 years ago. So I've been heavily involved in that, and it lets me live vicariously through a lot of other traveling anglers who get to film their adventures on the water as well. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And they say that trout don't hang out in ugly places. So fly fishing film and fly fishing photography is just always so cool to see. It's such a beautiful sport.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like golf or skiing or snowboarding, right? Like, just as long as you're out there, you're sure to like have an awesome day, because it's probably going to be a beautiful location.
Exactly. Now, you grew up in the outdoor world, right? I mean, your dad was kind of a fishing celebrity. Am I right?
Yeah, so it's my uncle who's the celebrity, Bob. That's my uncle.
Uh-huh.
And my dad is Wayne, and he runs. They still have the show. So, quick background for those who've never heard of me. In Canada, my uncle is kind of like the Wayne Gretzky of fishing. So 35 years ago, they started a bass sport fishing TV show, and it still to this day airs. It's been airing for 35 years straight. And it airs in the U.S. as well, but like massively big in Canada. So I grew up with, they're hardcore bass fishermen. So I grew up going to bass fishing tournaments. Instead of going to summer camp, we'd be traveling Canada as they fish tournaments. And I grew up with cameras around all the time and just traveling a lot. And so I never really thought I was going to really follow in their footsteps in that I was going to, make money off of the outdoors or nature or anything like that. But I did end up following their footsteps when the World Fishing Network, which is a TV channel, it had started up, and it originally was headquartered out of Toronto, which is where I grew up. So my dad was working with them because he does the business side of everything. And I started working with them, and I was like, oh, of course I want to make money, going out in the water and talking about fishing and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I did a couple of jobs at the World Fishing Network with the ultimate goal of pitching my own TV show. And then shortly after starting there, I got my own TV show called Hookin Up with Mariko Izumi, and it was a travel sport fishing TV show.
That's an awesome story. When you went out on your own and decided to pitch the show and kind of make your way, was it difficult? Did you ever feel like you were living in your uncle's shadow, or was it pretty easy for you to say, "Hey, this is me and I'm independent"? Or did you ever feel like you were in your uncle's shadow at all, Mariko?
That's a great question. I think I easily could have, but two main things made it so that I didn't. One is just my personality. I'm very much me and not too concerned with, I'm concerned with other people's feelings, but I also have no problem kind of living my narrative. So there's the personality thing, but then also because I think it would have been an issue if I had tried to, convince my dad and my uncle to help me do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, they did in terms of the name, of course, and the hookups, but financially and in terms of funding the series and the business side, it had nothing to do with them. It was solely through this, corporation. So I didn't rely on them at all. So, the marketing, there was a completely different office and all of that. So I think that probably helped for me not to feel that way. And then there was also the fact that I'm not like my uncle and my dad, which is that they're super technical. Like I said at the beginning of this interview, I'm just a really enthusiastic angler. So I framed the show to be that, which is I'm just somebody who wants to learn. And every episode I was with a professional guide or professional captain. And also I really threw in the travel aspect. So that kind of helped me differentiate my brand from my family's.
Yeah, that's great. And being excited like that, that really makes a big difference when you're on a show, seeing someone that maybe doesn't know it all. I think about the guy that does, was it Zimmern or something like Mark Zimmern, or the guy that goes around and eats for the Food Network. He's got a bald head and he eats like really weird food that he's never eaten before, but he's so excited about it that you just want to watch. That enthusiasm is a huge deal when you're in your kind of business. What were some of those? I mean, did you consider doing anything else beside fishing? I mean, were you getting on like that threshold of deciding your career and we're like, okay, I could be a doctor or I could do this?
Oh yeah. I really had, like when I say I wasn't planning on following in their footsteps, I really meant it. I had gone to university in England, and then I finished up at Queen's University, which is one of the main universities in Canada outside of Toronto. And I had done economic and French studies. And then I did a post-grad degree in public relations, and my first real adult job was in public relations. So it was it was really a serendipitous thing. The reason why that all switched was because the timing. So when I was doing my first real job in public relations, that was the same year that this World Fishing Network, which, by the way, most of you have probably instead of heard of Outdoor Channel. Outdoor Channel owns the World Fishing Network. That year, it had started up headquartered in Toronto, and my dad was helping them get going because none of them were fisher people. They were all just business people. So it was my dad who kind of nudged me and said, and told them, you know, I have a daughter, and she's, you know, comfortable in front of the camera, and she's also comfortable on the water if you ever need a female host. So I actually started doing this little online 5-minute fishing show back when like YouTube was just starting, right?
Right.
And so I would leave my real job a little bit early every Wednesday and go to World Fishing Network headquarters and shoot this weekly show. So yeah, I certainly was planning on doing all sorts of other things that didn't include TV or fishing prior to just actually getting into it.
You're obviously very passionate about what you do, and I just appreciate that so much. You know, that you wanted to make a living in the outdoors, and it's like you knew it could be done. You were surrounded by it your whole life, and there's so many people that would like to make something out of the outdoors, maybe make a living out in the outdoors, or maybe they've always wanted to be a lawyer, or maybe they've always wanted to open up their own shop or whatever. Why do you think so few people actually do or follow that passion? Why do you think people hold back, Mariko?
Well, if I'm talking from my own experience, it is legitimately hard to do. Like, obviously, via social media and that sort of thing, you know, you see the best parts and the most awesome parts and the reasons why it is worth it, at least to me. But it's not black and white like if you were to get just a regular employee job, right? It's in my blood, thankfully, but it involves a lot of hustle if you want to actually break even or make a profit off of trying to just be in the fishing, travel, or outdoor space and not just have a regular job. You know, so what you don't see on camera and social media is like all of the phone calls, all of the emails, all of the follow-up, like probably 100 emails to the same person to get them to commit to giving you a little bit of money to go out and do whatever project you want to do, right? So I would say that's probably, I mean, the reason why more people don't do it is valid. It's because it does take a certain kind of hustle, and it takes being comfortable with not having a stable situation all the time, both like timing and scheduling and also financially. But if there's anybody who's listening who's like on the edge, if you have at all any kind of capacity for like a little bit of extra stress and excitement, I would say do it, because ultimately, even though there's a lot of struggle, it's so worth it. Like it's so fulfilling, and you never feel bored. That's for sure. I don't think that you ever really regret anything. It just can be tricky and stressful sometimes, but totally worth it.
What is it about the outdoors, do you think, that really attracts people or really helps people? Because, I mean, we talk a lot. I won't put you on the spot, Mariko, but, you know, we talk a lot on our podcast about just the healing that comes through being outdoors, and also just the mental health side of outdoors. Do you think that helps a lot? And can you tell us a little bit about like how you've experienced that on your show or in the outdoors, Mariko?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually an easy question. I think 100% it is so good for your mental health. I often say, because I do things like yoga, you know, or all sorts of like health and wellness type things. But it like doesn't fail. No matter what, there is nothing that helps for me to either clear my head or make me less stressed than being on the water. There's just something about being on the water, and it doesn't matter what type of fishing it is, or even if I don't even have a fishing rod in my hands, but being on the water to me does something that not even like a yoga class can do to clear my brain and then kind of shut off the, firing of to-do lists or, stress about big or small things or whatever. So totally get why so many people talk about it, because it's so powerful. And, we've all had ups and downs in life. In our life, I haven't had maybe as big of a down as, let's say, a veteran, for example. I can only imagine, though, that would be, a tremendous tool for them when nothing else really seems to work. Because you don't really have to think like, okay, I'm doing this thing and this is good for my mental health. It just happens when you're out in nature, right? Like it kind of takes over.
Sure.
So I totally get that. And I totally also feel it. And actually the fly fishing film tour has done a number of films on that very thing, like highlighting specific people who've had, some real troubles in their life. And then fly fishing has been the thing to like bring them back to feeling good about life again. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we as a society, and we on more of a existential or broader as a whole, it seems like we push so hard all the time that a lot of people just neglect going outside, neglect building a fire, or neglect going fishing or outdoors, because unfortunately in our culture it's just produce, work, and very few people take advantage of that seventh habit from Stephen Covey, which is sharpen the saw and just relaxing.
Yeah. And even and the thing is, exactly, it's just because of the society that we live in, right? Like even for me, who it's part of my job and also I live it. Like I live 10 minutes up a winding road deep in the mountains of British Columbia. So like I live it truly in the heart of nature. And even for me, there are some days where I can just get caught up in like, no, this email has to be written, this phone call has to be made, this thing at home has to be cleaned. And yet maybe let's say I notice my daughter needs to be outside. So I put her in the stroller and we go for a walk, and it like takes me 30 seconds. And I'm like, oh, right. Like, of course I need to prioritize this, like you can't, it's just so not worth pushing the outdoors out as not a priority, but we often do because it is easy to forget in a society for sure.
And I've asked this question to several of my guests, Mariko, but we as a society, as we work hard and we're doing what we do and we forget about the outdoors, what do you think it is that people are chasing? Do you think it's like a cultural thing where people are just this is what we do, or do you think we're chasing after something that can't be obtained? I mean, it just seems like life gets faster and faster, maybe because my kids are getting older and I'm busy or doing things. But what do you think it is that people are chasing, or do you think it's just taught culturally to work?
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty big question.
I know, it's $1 billion question.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that really famous quote. I feel like it's quoted a lot now in the past couple of years, where they did this study. I'm sure you've talked about it before, where the study came out that in terms of a scale of happiness, after 70K, like making 70K a year, the happiness scale doesn't really budge much. Mm-hmm. So like if you make, 5 million versus just like 80K, there's not that big of a difference in your happiness. So I think that probably just speaks to our culture, right? Like we may have lots of things that we should feel grateful and happy for, but because we're constantly bombarded with the perfect social media posts and the Kim Kardashians who are making $1 billion and all that sort of thing, we feel inadequate and we're missing out on stuff. But really, if we can practice gratitude more, not all of us, but most of us probably have so much to be happy for, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we could just take a second every day to realize that it's literally just a matter of switching your perception on your own life, we probably would be happier. And then of course, again, if you view getting outdoors the same way that a lot of people view working out, then that would probably help all of us, right? Because like I said, with the walking my daughter, like it just takes literally feeling the fresh air or the sun or the rain or whatever on your skin. And then you automatically click in like, oh yeah, this makes me feel better. This makes me feel more whole, right? So it's probably that's probably a topic that's important for us all to talk about a lot, and then to be conscious to try to really consciously pass it down to our kids, right? So that they live that life and they know the value of the outdoors.
Sure. Yeah. And one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was social media. Do you think social media has helped or hurt the outdoor industry as a whole?
Well, there's definitely pros and cons to it for sure. It's just really changed. I think how it's changed all industries, or at least entertainment and non like super necessary industries. Like I'm not comparing it to healthcare, but most industries, I think it's probably, taken jobs away from certain focuses. So like a perfect example is when I first started in the business 10 years ago, the focus was get a bunch of funding and put a TV show together, right? Very straightforward. Now, you or I can really just sell ourselves. We don't need a whole entire office infrastructure with a bunch of employees to do that. So that's kind of good and bad, right? Like that affects us good and bad for those who are in the industry. Right. It also means that budgets, like if we're talking just business-wise, budgets have just been drastically shifted, right? So now there's hardly any budget for TV and traditional advertising, but now there's more budget to pay influencers, like individuals, to talk about what they like. I think it's positive, and now anybody can log on to Instagram and see, beautiful landscapes, beautiful types of fishing, and get inspired that way. They don't have to find like a really great TV show. Definitely pros and cons. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I hate social media. I love it. I mean, I hate doing it. I've got a face for podcasting, so I like I don't like the selfies. I'm a 38-year-old guy, I don't like taking pictures of myself. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
But it's kind of the nature of the business, and it's kind of what we do. And so it's kind of like one of those things. But one of the things I do love about it is I think it brings a lot more awareness to the outdoors. So we're seeing like this generation come up and they want to go camping, and they got this desire to kind of do things instead of just playing video games. And I think a lot of it's because of the exposure, or like, Instagram feeds like yours, or, these people who have these awesome feeds with beautiful pictures. It's like those places are real, and where before I don't think, people were as bombarded with that. So maybe it brings a lot more awareness or gets people outdoors. And in that case, in that instance, I think it's good all around. I mean, it's just the industry has changed, but I personally I just don't like my whole life on social media, but it's kind of necessary. So it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, for podcasting or trying to get, specific issues to do with sport fishing, it is necessary now. But yeah, definitely pros and cons to it for sure. I mean, and I have a daughter, she's a year and a half. It's like a constant topic in my head. Like, how am I going to manage that as she gets older? Right? Like not manage my social media. I don't care. She knows who I am, but like, how am I going to manage her use? Right. So, which is like a whole thing, because when I was a kid, that it didn't even exist.
Right.
So it's not like I can look to my parents like, oh, how did you manage that? Like it didn't exist. Right. Right. So it's complicated for sure.
Yeah, it is weird. My son is 9, my oldest, so he's kind of on the threshold of entering into that. And I'm like, okay, he's playing video games with his friends online, and even that's kind of like, I don't want that, But it's, it's kind of weird that we have to navigate that. And, my wife and I, we met before, there were, back, we've been married 14 years now. And when we started dating, it was like, it was almost a bad thing if you met someone online, or not bad, but people look down on
stigma,
you. Yeah. Now it's like, oh, of course, you meet online. Everyone meets online now. So it's like a whole other a whole nother place to.
It's such a whole. I know. I mean, like the kids, right? They're like when your son's playing video games, like he also is not necessarily playing video games and communicating with his real friends. He's probably also playing like people from around the world, but he calls them their friends. It's just crazy.
It is crazy.
I'm like taking in the last moments since my daughter's so young and appreciating it, but very conscious that, it's going to be a complex thing I'll have to manage at some point.
One more question. Do you think it's going to be hard for your daughter to kind of understand what mom does, or do you think because you did grow up with that like that. So
no, I don't. I think it'll be just like how it was for me, which is just, that's all we know, which was travel, family, business, entrepreneurial hustle, unconventional way of thinking. And that's the same thing that we're doing with her. I don't think it'll be hard. I think if anything, it'll be awesome just because it's like it's a really interesting life. Right.
Right.
The hard part might be integrating into a more regular life, meaning when she turns 5 and has to go to school. That might be more hard on Kevin and I than even her, though, because it's going to limit us, and how much we can travel and the rules and all of that thing. So, but for her, I don't think it's going to be hard. I think if anything, it's just she'll appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. And my kids are in school, and it is a big change. And then they want to play soccer or play sports. So, you spend a lot of less
scheduling.
Time. Yeah. And all of a sudden you've got like these 2 messy roommates, and, and you got to keep up with them.
I have that in Kevin, my partner. So I'm already acclimated to that part.
That's awesome. Well, Mariko, thank you very much for taking some time with us. If people wanted to find out about you, I know you're on World Fishing Network, but if people wanted to find out more about you, I mean, what links? I know you have a blog, but can you tell us where they could find you?
Yeah. So you can go to my Instagram is just my name at Mariko Izumi. I'm sure you'll have like a picture or a link or something on your page, right?
Sure.
And then if you want to check out the fly fishing film tour, because it's all across the U.S. and Canada, it's for you guys in the U.S., it's flyfishingfilmtour.com. And then in Canada, it's just fishingfilmtour.ca. I mean, there's a bunch more I could give you, but that's too much. So you can just Google my name, Mariko Izumi, and it'll all come up.
Yeah, we'll put a few links up on our site and also in the show notes. And you are an amazing human being. Thank you for being patient through our technical difficulties, and we really appreciate you very much, Mariko.
Yeah, thanks so much for reaching out to me. It was fun.
All right, have a good one.
Okay, bye.
Well, thank you, Mariko, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Remote No Pressure Podcast. Be sure to check out our website at remotenopressure.com. Follow us on our social, and also leave us some feedback. We love reviews. We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, go fishing.